What is up, everyone? This is your host, Eric Holtzman, and welcome to the Mindful Motion Podcast. What is up, everybody? I'm sitting here with Marly Paulus, the owner and founder of Body Metrics. Along with her is Dina Clinton, her right side woman. And we're here to talk about their high-end biometrics testing facility. And this facility, they help people optimize their metabolic health for optimal longevity and the highest quality of life possible. And I'm really excited to dive deep into some of the intricacies of the different types of testing that they do at that facility and discuss some of the data and how it helps people customize their exercise program, their nutrition program, so that they can optimize and have the best metabolic health possible. So I wanted to kickstart this with just talking about how you got into this industry, Marly. What was your journey like? What's your background? What led you to creating Body Metrics?
Yeah, so thanks for having us on here, Eric. I appreciate that. So for me, I made Body Metrics up almost 9 years ago. And the reason I started Body Metrics was because I had just had my second child. So I had a toddler and a newborn. And I started doing CrossFit, and the reason I did that was because a friend of mine opened a gym. But long story short, time is very limited. And I took the baby weight off relatively quickly, and people couldn't understand how I did it because I was eating what I needed and I was exercising effectively. So at the time where I was working, people are like, I can't believe it. You know, you lost all this weight and all you do is eat. So at that moment, I understood that there was a time and a need for people to understand what their bodies needed. So it wasn't CrossFit was the end all be all or any type of certain food. It was just, here's how much time I have eating effectively and exercising effectively. So I knew that I could prove that with science. So, and my degree is in science as well. So I researched out all the best equipment I could get my hands on. And then Body Metrics was born. And of course we have an amazing team to help us with that. But the most important thing is resting metabolic rate. What does your body need for you?
Okay, so it came to fruition kind of just from your personal experience, and you figured out how to accomplish what you wanted. And the transformation in your body led you to realize that maybe people need help with this type of
Absolutely. Absolutely. In my 20s, I would probably say I was a skinny fat, typical over-exercise, under-eat type of thing, fat-free. Everything was the craze. I remember living off of those like peach gummy rings. Those were amazing. But my body never changed. So I didn't really start putting on muscle and my body composition changing and looking different until I started eating enough of the right things.
Did you also utilize some of these testing procedures when you were trying to transform your body post-pregnancy or whatnot?
No, my drive started because we did some weight loss competitions in CrossFit, and I ended up winning like 3 of them because I'm also very competitive. So at that point, it was like, tell me what I need to do, I'll do it. So with that came wanting to understand my body, because there was a component to one of these challenges where we had to hang clean a certain amount of weight. So there's a very cardiovascular, endurance portion prior to that, which I was good at. I'm a soccer player. I love running, all those types of things, but I couldn't get like 80 pounds off the ground. But fast forward several months after that, I could easily get 120 off the ground, but I was heavier. My body looked better, but I was heavier. So with me, there was kind of that, for lack of a better term, that mind screw, right? How am I heavier, but I'm stronger, right? I should be lighter. And then came that understanding with I was putting on muscle mass because I was exercising, because I was eating more efficiently. Was I heavier? Absolutely. I had nothing to tell me, though, that it's not fat, that it's muscle. So I'm very numerically driven. So at that point, I needed to have something to prove to me that it wasn't just in my rear end and that it was absolutely muscle.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that people don't know. I mean, muscle is more dense. It doesn't take up as much area, and you might not look bigger but be heavier, and that always confuses people.
Yep.
And I show them that little figure of what a pound of fat looks like. It blows people's mind because it's quite large, and our body just packs it in under the skin really, really well. I noticed on your Instagram, do you compete in bodybuilding or bikini shows or something like that?
Yeah, I have done a few bikini competitions. I got a pro card this last one in December.
Woo, pro card.
Nice.
And off season a little bit right now, but I'm gearing up to do another one this December. And so just background, I'm 43 years old. I don't take anything. I do all the natural competitions, but my goal in doing that is to help people understand that you can eat and exercise and achieve a certain body composition. Am I going to look like those girls who are 20? No, but for me, I want to be as good as I can be for my age now and what I can accomplish, and having the science to back that and not have to take something that could compromise my health in the future is kind of our whole premise of body metrics, right? We want you to be able to eat for what your body needs and your goals without taking a bunch of things that could harm you in the future.
We do definitely have a holistic approach to weight loss, even weight gain, and just the numbers of it all. We don't sell any quick, easy pill, no supplement. We just give you the tools, meaning the advice and the scientific testing to back it, to show you this is what you can do, and you can do it in a holistic, healthy way without, like she said, compromising your body in the long run. And I'm not saying all supplements are bad, but we don't always know what the long-term effects are going to be of certain drugs and certain supplements. So we definitely try to do it from a more holistic approach.
Sure. I mean, that's wise, and everything always seems to come down to foundational principles. If you have the foundation set and you're still not seeing progress, then maybe it's time to pull on some other levers. This makes me think of, I don't know, because you guys are in the space, you've heard of the, I can't remember the name of it, but there's this new prescription out for fat loss that.
Ozempic.
What's it called?
Ozempic, a semaglutide.
Do you guys know much about it? What's your take on that?
I think it's, I mean, we've done some research on it. We have to be in the know for all the up and coming drugs in this realm that we're in. There's definitely been some good studies on it. I think it's a tool like any other tool. It can be good and it can be bad depending upon how you use the tool. I don't think it's great for people looking to lose 10 to 20 pounds. It's nothing that they need to do. They need to put in the hard work and do it holistically. But I do think it has a place for people who maybe have different medical problems and maybe have a lot of weight to lose and have tried other things. So we don't want to ever shame anyone about what they're doing, what they've taken. We do have clients that take those kind of medications. They're on weight loss drugs and things like that. And you know what? If that's what they need in the moment, then we're going to go ahead and plan their lifestyle around that. But the goal is to get off of that at some point and to be able to manage your own diet and exercise without the use of drugs like that. So if you come to us and you're taking it and you're in that place, great. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out a diet plan that can work with that. And then let's figure out how we can taper you off of that in a slow and safe way. And we do work with board certified registered dietitian nutritionists who can practice medical nutrition. So we would want them to work with our registered dietitian to make sure that when they do, hopefully they'll go right eventually to get off of those type of medications, that they do it in a really safe place, in a safe way. They're not gaining a ton of weight back. Because what happens is anyone who gets off of these drugs tend to gain a lot of weight, and sometimes even more than what they lost. And that's what we don't want to happen. So I think it's a tool. I think there's some good things about it. And I think there's some maybe not so great things about it. And I think more research needs to be done on long-term side effects for it as well. Yeah. That's my opinion. I don't know, Marly, your opinion.
No, and of course we're always in the same boat with that. And for us, it's educating people and having them understand their bodies from a scientific perspective, which is what we provide. And again, not shaming them, but saying, okay, once you get to this certain point, we're going to start experiencing metabolic adaptation. You could potentially be slowing your metabolism down, which is oftentimes what happens with quick fix types of medications, because muscle is metabolic. So sometimes people burn through their muscle, slows their metabolism down. Now we're at this point where we have to reteach them to go back to eating how they normally would or could, but finding the right serving sizes for them now. They can't go back to eating 2,000 calories if their body only needs 1,500, or they are going to absolutely experience that extreme weight bounce back, which for us, that's what we don't want to see. We want them to learn and understand how to go from where they're at. You know, we're very big on meeting people where you're at and then moving forward, right? If you need Cheetos or a glass of wine built in your meal plan because you're not ready to give them up, is it the best? Absolutely not, right? Could you eat broccoli instead and drink water? Yeah. But if you're not going to, you're not going to get results. So everybody's at a different place. And those people taking some of those drugs and whatnot, we have to find where they're at and understand their bodies and then work with them to educate them.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think it's good for people to know that it doesn't always have to be a certain exact approach. We can work with what works for them. You know, there's this appearance, everyone's saying that like 90% of the United States is metabolically healthy. What does metabolic health mean to you guys? How would you define it?
Do you want to do this one?
I think that might be fairly accurate. I don't know if that number is a little bit inflated, but if you look at the majority of people, like if you were to people watch, go sit at the mall, watch the people around you. Most of them are going to be in the overweight, obese category. So I do think that there's definitely more overweight, obese people than fit. And metabolic health to me means that you're not necessarily skinny. Absolutely not. You can definitely be a thicker person, even in the overweight category, but have really great metabolic health if you have a good amount of muscle. So, you know, thinking about people who are more like, I don't know, I guess soccer players are fairly thin. I'm trying to think of like a sport that has like football players. Okay. Your linebackers, if you were to see them outside of football, you wouldn't think they're an elite athlete, right? Because they're usually a little bigger. They got a belly on them, but the amount of muscle that they have health-wise benefits them in every parameter that you would measure. If you did blood work on them, on someone who has maybe they're the same weight on the scale, right? 300 pounds versus someone who also is 300 pounds. But this linebacker has I was going to cuss, but I won't say a ton of muscle. And the other one doesn't. The blood markers, your cholesterol, your glycogen levels, your blood sugar levels, all those things are going to be way healthier in that person with a lot of muscle than the other person that doesn't have the muscle. So metabolic health to me really means, what's your muscle to fat ratio like? And the fact that you can be considered overweight and still be healthy as long as you're consistently working out in some way, shape, or form. And you have to find what you love to do. Like I'm not a runner. Like Marly's like, oh, I do soccer and I love to run. Like F running. I'm not a runner. I'm not going to run. But I love to play tennis and golf and do those fun things that can give me a little bit more cardiovascular health. CrossFit. I'm a big CrossFitter. Those type of things. So you do need to find what you love. But the point is, there's not one shape, I guess, or look, right? You, like Marly said too, they're skinny fat people. Like they can look healthy. Absolutely. I've had clients come in and they weigh 100 pounds on the scale and they look skinny and they look like, oh, this person must really eat healthy and be a healthy person. And then they hop on the body composition machine and they're 40% fat. So they just have no muscle. So that's a metabolically unhealthy person. So they come in all shapes and forms. Really exercise is going to be a key component. Like Marly said, building muscle increases your metabolism and it just helps with like every parameter of life and longevity. We just posted a blog post about your VO2 Max, your cardiovascular health and fitness, and how that's linked to longevity in life. So long story short, I'm kind of beat around the bush here, but metabolic health looks different on different people.
Sure. And I think that muscle can be undervalued. I mean, most people don't even realize that it is an organ system. And if you don't train it, it does get dysfunctional. It does release hormones. It's a big pool for glycogen. The more you have, the better you'll do. And everyone's always worried about getting buff as if it's so easy to get buff. I think it's okay to push yourself and try to get a little muscle. You're not going to look like Arnold overnight.
Right.
So
I like the analogy I can't claim it as myself, but thinking that you're going to work out and get super buff is like thinking you're going to get in your car and become a NASCAR driver. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes hours and hours and hours of dedication. Those people have to work their butts off to look that way. They have to eat in a calorie excess. They have to train for hours in the gym every single day for years. Like, girlfriend, you are not going to get buff working out at the gym 1 hour a day, 6 days a week. Like, you're going to get toned and you're going to look amazing and your body composition is going to change, but you won't get buff just as much as you won't become a professional NASCAR driver just driving around your neighborhood. Like, it doesn't happen like that.
You know, this makes me think of a client recently who has some goals for transforming he's pretty thin. He wants to look leaner but look also bigger and more toned, right? And you mentioned this skinny fat guy, 40% fat, but looks good relatively. With someone like that who's skinny but doesn't have a lot of muscle, but maybe wants to lose weight, but also put on muscle, do you suggest in that case to eat in excess of calories, start putting on muscle, and then later down the line, maybe we'll cut down the calories once the muscle gain is there? Because a lot of people want to do both at the same time, but it seems like a losing battle when you do that. So what's your approach with someone like you mentioned with the 40% fat and skinny?
Well, again,
go ahead, Marly.
Oh, say, well,
we definitely do both.
Yeah. Meeting where they're at is really important. It does have a lot to do on their metabolism and what they have done to their metabolism to get to that body fat percentage. Typically, somebody who is at 40% body fat hasn't been setting the world on fire. They could have done some restrictive dieting, slowed their metabolism. You can do it together, low and slow. And again, it depends on the client. You could, fuel somebody in an excess. They will put on that muscle, but they're also going to gain some fat. Mm-hmm. And then you cut them, which can also be done too, but it's a battle, right? When they get to that goal, then what? So, in doing competitions and things like that, I have eaten in excess. I personally don't like feeling like a stuffed sausage. Yes, I'm stronger, but I can feel it in my pants and things like that. Personally, I prefer to do it low and slow, kind of do both at the same time, because it becomes a routine. It becomes consistent. It's very adaptable to my lifestyle, right? I don't have to go, rethink everything now. Oh gosh, I'm on a cut. And then all the mental stuff that comes with that, right? Like, oh, I can't have that peanut butter now. I can't do this. I can't do that. And everything is a negative. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's independent.
Sure. That makes more sense from a normal standpoint of like day-to-day life versus like a bodybuilder who's trying to maximize the changes. So I'm on board with that. I maybe you guys have probably heard of this book, The Secret Life of Fat. I think it was called, and they talked to the woman in that book. She had some major issues with her metabolism. She really messed it up from yo-yo dieting, and she claims in the book, for the most part, I'm sure this is not completely rigid, but that once you damage your metabolism and you slow it down, it's very, 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 very challenging to try to restore that. Do you guys feel that way as well from what you've read or what you've learned, or is there a way to regain the metabolic rate?
Yeah, I mean, we see that all the time, especially with some of these restrictive diets. But what happens is, and back to Dina's point, it's all muscle. So science says for every pound of muscle you put on, your metabolism speeds up 50 calories a day. Now, on the flip side of that, when you are not eating enough, your body is burning through your muscle glycogen to fuel you, right? You start to lose muscle mass. Now, on the back end, you're slowing your metabolism down. So we have to have these conversations with people that I would say 90% of our clients, I have a slow metabolism. They don't. They're just not eating enough. But typically we'll see that, right? And you've hit the plateau. You're doing everything the same. Now we have to start working to put that muscle mass on you. But to Dina's point again, you're not going to get buff overnight. It's going to take time. It's hard. You have to be consistent. Consistent over perfect all day long. And eventually we will see their metabolism start to speed up. And the individual, our client, what we hear back from them is, I'm starting to get more hungry. I'm hungrier all the time. And that's where we come in. They don't understand how people, like, how am I eating more and I'm exercising less? Maybe they're doing less cardio, more strength training. And my body's changing. But it's all that metabolic adaptation. But absolutely, it takes time. And it sucks. It's not hard, but you have to do
And
it.
we can test people's metabolism rate, metabolism speed, especially too, so we can show them the change. So the good news is your metabolism isn't static. It doesn't stay the same, and you can change it. Is it going to be more difficult once you've messed it up pretty good? Sure. You know, weight loss in general, body composition in general is difficult. It's not an easy thing, or else we wouldn't be in business, or else the weight loss industry wouldn't be so huge, right? I always tell people it's a simple concept as far as eating healthy and exercising. Does everyone understand we need to do that? Yes, it's simple, but it doesn't mean it's easy to do. So can you change your metabolism for the better and fix it? Absolutely, you can. And to Marly's point, you need to put on muscle. Muscle's the key to kind of fixing your metabolism, increasing your metabolic rate, increasing your metabolism speed. And then like she said too, the clients start to get hungry. So we have seen people who have messed up their metabolism learn to eat for their body specifically, learn to put on muscle and not be afraid of lifting weights and not just be a cardio bunny in the gym. And their metabolism has improved so much. Like, it's really funny. Like, sometimes I'll test a client. I'm like, oh my God, you must have a beautiful metabolism. Did anyone ever tell you how beautiful your metabolism is? Oh, no, I don't know what that even means, but thank you. So we want to see a high number when it comes to testing your metabolic rate. The higher your metabolic rate is, the more food you can eat and enjoy and still reach your goals, whether that be weight loss or muscle gain. So if someone has a very high metabolic rate and very high speed, metabolism speed, that's a really pretty metabolism. I like to compliment my beautiful metabolism clients. But long answer short, yes, you can fix your metabolism. It requires some work. I don't think it's world's hardest, depending upon the person, but I don't also think it's super, super easy. It's going to require sacrifice and dedication and hard work, just like weight loss in general does. You're going to have to say no to alcohol sometimes. You're going to have to get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym when you really don't feel like it. It's about being consistent. You know, you don't have to be perfect either. We're not robots. We're human beings. So you go out on Friday night and you have a drink with your friends, you have some nachos. Okay, that's fine. As long as most of the time you're consistent, you can enjoy life too. You have to find that balance. We're not robots. We don't want to follow the same thing day in and day out. It's not sustainable. You want to enjoy life a little bit too, but consistency is key. But you definitely can fix your metabolism, and we can help you.
Yeah, and plus, like you said, if you have more muscle, those nights out with nachos are more forgiving. So I'm sure you guys can probably run into this on occasion because it's a big thing right now, especially in the biohacking space. Everyone's worried about longevity. Everyone wants to make sure mTOR is down, autophagy is up, so we're going to fast periodically. Where's your stance on that? Like, do you guys pay any attention to that, or is it more like, where's your opinion in that regard?
Well, I mean, absolutely. There's always something going on, biohacking, all the things that we're fed constantly. And I think you can't out-science, a bad diet. You can do, and there's so many things out there, some things I haven't even heard of that come up. But again, for us, it's sustainability. What is going to sustain you and your lifestyle? And then backed with the education behind it. So if somebody is fasting constantly, at some point in time, that is going to slow their metabolism, right? And everybody is different. So back to that, right? If you feel like you overdid it and you skip dinner, it's not the end of the world. But when we are looking at somebody's metabolism specifically, we do look at their usage of carbs and fats. So what substrates are you burning? So, for instance, if you're more of a carb burner and you're fasting and you burn through all the carbs because your body, will burn the dietary carbohydrates you've consumed, and then you get up and you go exercise and you live day to day, you're burning more and more carbs, but your body has no more to pull from. That's where it pulls from your muscles. So for that person, is fasting a great idea? No, if it's going to affect their body composition. So, and I guess, it depends on what you're looking at. Like, are they more concerned with those markers? Are they more concerned with their body composition? What's their goal independently?
Got it. Really, truly making it customized. This kind of lends into this idea of metabolic flexibility. So in your point, when you say that someone's a carb burner, how do you determine that they are able to switch to burning fat? Because if you're metabolically flexible, and relatively healthy in that regard, you should be able to switch from a carb burner and then quickly become ketogenic if you're not eating carbs, if you fast for a day, if your system's working right. So how would you determine that? Do you guys have like a keto breathalyzer for someone in that who likes to fast, or like how do you work that out?
We mostly just measure their body composition. We don't we don't really test for ketosis or anything like that. And to be honest, there's not a whole lot of difference in a low carb versus a high carb diet as far as fat loss is concerned. Where the difference lies is in muscle gaining. So typically, if you're on a lower carb or keto diet, it's much more difficult to gain muscle as opposed to being on a fed like low to moderate carbohydrate diet. And there's lots of studies that support those claims too. So if you're looking to just lose fat, both are tools. You need to do what you like, what works for you. If you enjoy a low carb diet and that feels easier for you to follow, you should do it. But from a performance standpoint, it may affect some performance. And so I'm not a huge fan of keto, but again, I don't bash anyone where they're at. So if they're going to do a ketogenic, like where they really are testing it, going to be ketosis, I do usually suggest that they try to eat their carbohydrates before their workout. So that way they're not compromising a lot of muscle deterioration, or, their body's not eating their muscle. So the feeding window matters more when you're doing fasted things, when you're doing intermittent fasting, when you're doing keto, more for performance and muscle gain. Again, everything's a tool, and there's not a cookie cutter version. That's not like, hey, this works for everybody, so everyone should do this one thing. What works for you doesn't work for me, doesn't work for Marly. We're all different human beings, and testing your body composition so we can see, okay, your muscle went up, your fat went down, or you know what? Your fat went down, but your muscle went down too. So let's have that conversation. What did you do differently? Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what works for your body specifically. And that's where the scientific testing comes into place. Now we can test their body composition. Now we can retest their metabolism. We can see how their body adapted to their new diet, and did that ideally work for this person's body? Or do we need to change things up and see if there's a different approach that's better for that person?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, basically the underlying thing you're saying here is that you could be carnivore, keto, high carb. We'll just see what the data shows us, and then we'll make adjustments accordingly. I think that makes perfect sense, because you can get the same results in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely.
It's nice to have some data just to support or tell you what's happening. I'm actually really curious, like how fast do things change? Like, do you check people week to week and you see muscle change that quickly, or is it more like a month? Like, what's the time frame that you see things change in people's composition?
It definitely takes time, right? I mean, you look at gender, age, all of those things. What are they doing for their training? And back to the metabolic piece on that, it's understanding the carb and fat burning usage. So that is something that we measure when we do your resting metabolic rate, is understanding how many calories you need. But also, a lot of people don't know, when you burn fat, you actually exhale it as a gas, as CO2. So that's how we're able to determine the percentage and grams of carbs you burn at rest, and fat at rest. And then we take that same modality, so to speak, and we do your VO2 Max test. So now I can pinpoint where your heart rate needs to be to burn the most amount of fat using all of those tools. So when we are looking at changing body composition, now I can say, Eric, I want you working out at 110 beats per minute because you're burning most of your calories from fat. Then we're going to have you strength train 4 days a week. But again, it could get deeper as far as, testosterone, everything else is concerned. But again, there's no really cookie cutter time frame. I mean, Dina, would you say?
I mean, I don't think every single week is an ideal time to test. There's a lot of fluctuations that happen, especially for women, in that time of the month. I think monthly at the most. We have a plan that's every 6 weeks. That's a very good time frame. You can make a lot of change in 6 weeks. Also too, because of the fluctuation can be discouraging to some clients. So maybe 1 week they come in, they've lost weight, they're super motivated. The next week they come in, they've gained weight, and it can be discouraging. And sometimes we don't see the metabolic changes immediately. So like what my body's doing today is what I ate 2 weeks ago, kind of a thing, so you need that time to make the change. So I would say once a month at the most, more realistically, every 6 to 12 weeks would be a really great time to test your body composition. And then typically with metabolism and VO2 max, about every quarter, every 3 months, 4 times a year is a good time frame, I would say, for testing those type of things too.
Okay. Would you say the most valuable test for helping someone identify how to lose body fat is going to be the resting metabolic rate and determining where their target zone is for fat loss, essentially?
Absolutely.
If you think about it, what's the most important thing and what's the hardest thing people have struggled to do when they're losing weight? Is it exercise or is it their diet, right? It's the diet. People go to the gym 5 times a week. They have no problem doing that. Like, it may not be their favorite, but they get into the gym, they get it done. What they're doing the other 23 hours of the day is the difficult part. What are they putting in their body? The tracking of the nutrition is going to be the hardest component. So if we can get that under a little bit more control and do their resting metabolic rate test, so they can get a big picture of how much they should be consuming, it's just going to further aid in their weight loss journey. And that's probably the biggest and most eye-opening too, to be honest. I think a lot of our clients are women, 30s, 40s, who have kind of done all the fad diets, right? We've done the keto, we've done the low fat, we've done the Atkins, we've done the, what else? I don't know, all the popular ones out there. Or we're yo-yo dieters kind of thing. So they come in and they get their metabolism tested, and I'm like, okay, your resting metabolic rate is 1876. And they're like blown away. Well, I've been eating 1,200 calories a day, and sometimes I don't even hit that. I'll pull up an app and I'll track their food. Okay, what did you eat? What did you eat yesterday? We go through everything they ate yesterday, and they'll come in at 900 calories sometimes. And they can't figure out why they can't lose weight. Well, honey, you're eating 900 calories a day. That's more than a toddler, or that's less than a toddler needs. So we want to try to bridge the gap of teaching them that more food doesn't mean more fat if you're going to do it the right way. If you're strength training and you're eating appropriately, not just counting calories, but macros count too, proteins, fats, and carbs. We want to make sure this person's getting enough protein. And that is the hardest for people to grasp, to understand, and to realize that usually I feel like the majority of our clients need to eat more in order to see their body composition change for the better. And it's a scary thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, that doesn't intuitively make sense, but I think once you understand there's a thermal effect of food, and when you actually eat it, it can trigger a calorie burning effect, especially with protein. It's a higher thermal effect. So it just doesn't hit home until you realize some of those little details. You touch base on this, exercising, getting in, working out can be less difficult because it's such a short time frame in your day, whereas eating is so psychologically driven and behaviorally driven. I'm sure you run into people having issues giving up things, or the psychology makes them eat in weird ways. Like how or what do you do with the psychology behind their eating habits?
That's a really great question, because honestly, it's difficult. If someone has a drug or alcohol problem, they can just avoid drugs and alcohol. If someone has an eating disorder or emotional eater, or they were abused in the past and now they're turning to food, you can't just stop eating, right? Food is around us all the time. We have to have it 3 times a day minimally. It's at social settings. It's everywhere. So it's a little bit more difficult on the people that do have eating disorders. The best we can do is just try to relate to them, try to encourage them to eat in healthy ways. We do have a girl that we can refer them to. She's the Red Shoe Project. It's her nonprofit organization. She deals with a lot of eating disorders and things like that. But it's a very delicate issue. You don't want to like, oh, hey, you should see this person if they're like offended. Like, I don't have an eating disorder. So I think building rapport with the clients and really getting to know them on a personal level to where you can finally feel comfortable enough to have that conversation if they're not reaching out to us first. Right. I feel like most women maybe don't realize that they have an eating disorder. We definitely get the people who are very, very into it and they want to know every single number, and they get super upset if they've gained like 0.1% of anything. So I think it's a few things. It's building rapport with the client, giving them a safe environment to share their struggles with you, and then having resources available when they're ready to have them.
Yeah. Okay. Do you guys ever correlate like blood marker values to your testing modalities? Do you ever tell people to get labs and you look them over? Does that ever come up into your procedures?
Yeah, currently we don't personally do any blood testing. Obviously, if they have it, we would like to see it. We'll refer that to our dietitians if there's anything that they're lacking as far as that's concerned. We do have a portion of one of our body composition tests that we look at cellular health and inflammation. And if that marker is low, we do recommend them getting a blood test. Typically, there is some deficiencies involved. It could be vitamin D, it could be potassium. We have had a couple people with cancers. And it's also important when we're looking at their nutrition, but that's something we kind of leave them to their own devices if they want to look at that. And we can utilize it to our advantage if they do have that and help them, even more precisely. What can you eat? What can you consume instead of having to take another drug that could potentially help if they have something in that realm.
Okay. So it's not an on-site thing, but if they have their labs, you look them over, just might as well get some more information. There's a big upswing in the whole like functional medicine practitioner realm and using like companies like Cyrex Labs to do food sensitivity testing. Because as you mentioned, inflammation can play a role if you're eating foods that cause inflammatory responses that could hurt your ability to lose weight or affect your ability to work out effectively. I guess I'm wondering, do you have clients that utilize those things? Have you ever explored some of those tests, or what's your take on them?
Yeah, absolutely. We do carry food sensitivity testing in our office. Oftentimes, people may or may not have a sensitivity if they can't lose weight. Most people defer that they do have an issue. And again, we don't know until that's something that is confirmed. So again, if they have blood testing, sensitivity testing issues, or if they have those results, we can totally implement that as well. The more knowledge that we have collectively to help that individual, the better. And again, most times, do they have an intolerance? Maybe, maybe not. But if we can change their diet and the inflammatory foods, things like that, is usually what's causing maybe some discomfort associated with eating, which would lead them to think they have an intolerance to something.
Okay.
And then we would also refer them to our dietitian because, again, they can practice medical nutrition. And one of our dietitians actually specializes in gut health. She did her thesis on it, and she's very knowledgeable when it comes to inflammatory markers in people and foods and working with them to figure out what it might be and maybe do an elimination diet or something like that. So Marly and I don't necessarily have the degree to offer that to them, but we have the resources available in our dietitians to work with clients who have special dietary needs. If you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, if you're dairy free, if you're gluten free, if you have sensitivities and allergies and things like that, we can definitely work with you using our dietitians and still help you lose weight and plan a meal plan that is beneficial for you and where you're at today.
So you guys have a like mobile testing van or something, right? Where you have like your testing facilities that you can take to people's homes. Like, what's that look like? What do you offer in that? And like, how far do you go? Can I get it?
Yeah, so typically we travel, we take all of our equipment to, let's say we were to go to you, right? And we'll have a minimum amount of testing we require, right? Because it's an extensive.
You gotta make it worth our while. You gotta pay us.
Yeah.
We're not gonna come out for $50.
Yeah, we bring all of our testing to you and we can run anything. We do take all of our equipment inside whatever facility you're offering. We don't necessarily test out of a van specifically. It's just more comfortable in a room instead of being in a van, especially when it's, extremely hot and the weather's crazy. So yeah, we can take our stuff anywhere. We don't really have a parameter set on how far we will go, but the minimum amount of testing would dictate that. And then, we have gone to LA before. And so we have to get a hotel and things like that. And we just figured that in. But yeah, we can absolutely come. We do gyms, we do corporate wellness, businesses, fire, police, all of it.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, cool. So you could come to my gym where there's 20 people, and if it was worth your while, you would do that. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's
And
good
it's
to know.
fun too because we'll run different like challenges too. So maybe your gym wants to do a 6 week or an 8 week or 12 week challenge. And there's sometimes a disadvantage when you're just doing scale weight, right? Because men can lose a lot of weight on the scale fairly easily too. Or if you just completely cut carbs out, you can lose a lot of weight on the scale because you're losing a lot of water weight. But where we come into play and test their body composition, we can show who lost the most body fat percentage. So it's fair across the board, and there can't be really any cheaters to the process. So we'll run challenge. We do a lot of challenges out of gyms or businesses, or even like police and fire departments too. It's a big, you know, to
Competitive.
like I won and stuff like they're very competitive in those realms. So it's super fun going to places and being able to test people in our mobile stuff and it makes sense for gyms too, because not everyone, can come out to Redlands or we're actually in 4 different locations, but if we can come to you and have everyone come and show up on that day and see the results and stuff. So it's a fun thing that we offer. I love mobile testing. It takes me out of the office. It's something different, something fun to do. So we're available 7 days a week. You just have to book with us, and you have to have enough service credit. And yeah, we'll come to you and we'll set up shop, and you'll love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's like a really nice adjunct for people that can't or don't want to drive really far, potentially like me. You mentioned this whole pre-post pregnancy testing. I'm actually really interested to hear what does that entail? Like, what are you looking at? What's the purpose? What does it serve?
So, I mean, going back to when, I started this whole business, as a pregnant mother, right, and younger, not full of knowledge at that point, you start to freak out, right? Like, am I eating enough for this baby? Is this baby going to be healthy? I don't want to eat for 2, I don't want to gain tons of weight. Some people do use it as a free-for-all. So, again, our goal is to, right? But we've all done it, right? And no shaming, whatever you've done. But if we can build a plan based off their resting metabolic rate and the needs of a baby's growth in each trimester independently, we are designing that. And then we do have the postnatal for if you are a breastfeeding mother, if you're not breastfeeding, right? Because now after you have this baby, no matter how much weight you gain, you feel you just want it off of you, right? But I personally remember, this might be too much information, but I pumped, and so it was like, I've only pumped 6 ounces of breast milk. It should be 8 to 12, right? Is my breast milk depleting? I'm going to make the breast milk cookies and eat all the yeast and this and that. Right? You start overthinking it. But then again, if we have a dietitian to design something for where you're at and the needs of pre and postnatal breastfeeding or not is very important. And then furthermore, we do a 3D scan. So we're tracking the progression of the baby bump on a monthly basis. I mean, there's everything, right? You can do the little cast or whatever. But we have several clients. We've tracked that progress before and after. And it's kind of cool. Just a little token to have.
And I'm thinking about a pregnant woman and a postnatal woman, their body composition changes significantly and it changes quickly. Their metabolic needs change significantly and it changes quickly. There's a lot of change happening in a pregnant woman. There's a lot of change happening in a post-baby woman. So we want you to get seen a little bit more frequently with us so we can track it a little bit better, because your metabolism is just going to be super inconsistent, right? Especially if you're nursing. And then what if you stop nursing and you're not cleared for exercise the first 6 to 8 weeks, depending on if you have a C-section. So there's a lot of different components into it. So we want to make sure that the woman is doing it in the safest fashion possible that's going to be best for their baby, best for their body, and having realistic goals too. Like, we see those famous people who bounce back 6 weeks later and they have a 6-pack already. Like, that's not realistic. We're human beings. Like, don't beat yourself up if 3 months later you still look, 3 months pregnant. We want to be here to hold your hand and encourage you and to show you that your body did this amazing, beautiful thing. And let's find the healthiest way for you to get back to a comfortable position. And sometimes that doesn't mean a pre-pregnancy body. You have a new body now. Sometimes it widens your hips out. Sometimes it completely changes your body composition to where you'll never really fully be back, and embracing that and feeling beautiful in that skin too. But doing it again, having those dietitians that can make sure that your milk supply is there because you're eating the nutrient dense foods that you need to. After you're done nursing, what does your nutrition look like? Like Marly said too, you don't necessarily need to eat for two. It's like a 500 calorie increase when you're pregnant. You don't. I ate for 2 or 3 people. I gained a lot of weight, and it took me 18 months after the baby to get all my baby weight off. And I did it in a slow way. And I had a lot of issues too. I had thyroid issues, and I had PCOS and all those things that make it a little bit more difficult for me personally. And that's why I really have a soft spot in my heart for women who struggle to get the baby weight off, because it was hard for me to see other women be like snap back. Like 6 months later, they look amazing in a bikini. Like 6 months later, I still looked pregnant. And in fact, people would come up to me and ask me, "Oh, when are you due?" And I'm like, "Oh, I already had the baby." Because it changes your body, and it's hard. It's emotional too for a woman. So we want to be that support system and empower them with giving them the tools that they need and the science back behind it, so they know that they're doing the right thing in the right time for their body. It's different from their sister's pregnant body.
Yeah.
So it's called Baby Metrics. We're launching. It's a new thing. We're super excited about it, and we need some moms to test this out on. So
Yeah.
Your wife is pregnant, so maybe we could send her our way after or during. We could do a little 3D body scan and track her little bump.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to take a trip out to Redlands and see what we find. So it's the same testing essentially that you do with other people. You're just doing it in different parts of the pregnancy. But do you see? Have you, if you've done it with some people before, have you noticed trends that are kind of similar? Expectations of when things are going to change, or is it sort of variable amongst people?
Everything is variable. We're all independent, but what we find, again, to Dina's point, is even those incremental changes, right, is motivating, because for instance, you're going to see your wife every day, pregnancy and in reverse, oh yeah, you look good. You may not see those in her, but when she comes into us, we're like, hey, you've actually lost 12 inches, right? Your hips may or may not be, but for the most part, they're going to be coming back in. Everything will be coming back in, and we can track that. And that's what we're here for, is to give them those tools to obviously, direct them in the right direction for their diet, but then also to say, hey, look, it might be a small win. It's still a win, because to Dina's point, everybody is different. Everybody has different hurdles. And, when I started Body Metrics, I had a toddler and I had a newborn. And it's crazy, right? Now you're running on fumes. There's less sleep. You're trying to keep a household, feed a kid, feed another kid. It's crazy. There's a lot of hurdles. So one person's journey is going to be different from the next.
Yeah.
Is this your first baby, Eric?
No, our second daughter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How old's your other one?
2-year-old now. She just turned 2. She's
you're gonna have a busier life.
That's about the exact same space mine are, about 2.5 years. So
yeah, it's a good gap.
I have 3, and I suggest to everybody just stop at 2. It's
Well, I have a boy, but I'm not hating it at all. It's just
yeah,
father-son bond is kind of a thing.
Then have 4. Go.
Yeah, have 4, exactly. I just have 4 girls, probably would be my luck.
Imagine.
Yeah, but to your point, she definitely, some days she just blows up, and then some days she shrinks, and some days she sees herself differently. I don't notice these changes so much, but she feels them. And I can imagine there's some peace of mind if you had like clear information that says, here are the numbers. It can take out some of the guesswork that our emotions play on us. I can see that being immensely valuable.
I told Marly we should do like a dad bod one too, because you know what? Dads gain a lot of weight sometimes during pregnancy as well, just because mom is eating a little bit more. Dad tends to eat a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely had that happen the first time. This time I'm a little more on par with my training and whatnot, but situation takes a little hit. I wanted to switch gears, and I wanted to talk hydration real quick, because I know you mentioned a new testing procedure, the sweat testing. What's that about?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of people asking about doing sweat testing in more of like the triathlete space. So that's something we're currently testing out, but it can be used across all platforms. So what we want to look at is how much fluid they lose during activity, and then the amount of sodium they lose, and then design a replenishment program around that. So you'll hear people talk about, oh, I'm a salty sweater, I'm not a salty sweater, but that can be defined by, if I was to go sweat and I'm wearing, a black outfit, you can see, kind of the white on there. So with that being said, again, our dietitian is going to be designing replenishment programs, but this can be taken across all facets. I mean, think of a CHP officer, right? You're sitting on your motorcycle all day just sweating to death, right? Firefighters, any athletes, young athletes, it's very important to have that replenishment. It's something that, maybe a lot of people aren't looking at. They know to drink water, but what about the sodium that you're losing?
Mm-hmm. Does the sweat, the test also measure potassium and magnesium, or is it mostly sodium?
So right now we're just doing sodium, but there is an opportunity to measure those other components as well.
Okay. So I read this book called The Salt Fix not that long ago. I guess my question is, do you guys feel like the FDA's recommended daily allowance for salt being around 2 grams? Do you think that's adequate for most people, especially if you're recommending more exercise and cardio and weightlifting?
The problem with RDAs is they're just so generalized, right? The RDA, if you were to look up the RDA for protein intake, it's pretty low. And it's basically like, this is how much you need to not die.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say if the RDA, how accurate it is, because it's so many different components. Are you working out outside or inside? What's the weather like? Some people sweat way more than others. I'm not a super sweaty person when I exercise. I don't get drenched or anything. And my girlfriend that I work out with, soaking wet when she's done, like dripping. And I'm just like, we did the same exact movements, but we sweat totally different. So, and I feel like, especially in the older generation, like us 40-year-olds, we've been taught that salt is bad for you. There's all these salt-free, low sodium options, because old science was that too much salt can be dangerous and bad for your health.
Your blood pressure, yeah.
Right. Now, of course, if you are on blood pressure medication and you have high blood pressure, absolutely you need to pay attention to those things. But if you're a normal person or an elite athlete or even just a regular athlete, you need to replenish that salt. And you should be intaking probably more than the RDA recommends. But again, that's going to be unique and individualized to the person.
Yes. That's where your testing.
What's that?
That's where your testing comes in, to give it more clear delineation of how much. Because I mean, in that book I read by the cardiologist who wrote it, The Salt Fix, he said it was recommending. He saw the data showing like 5 to 10 grams for a lot of people was what they needed. And he also mentioned we're highly tuned to determine, like we can sense when we need salt. So if you're craving it, it's pretty likely you need it.
Right.
It's ingrained in our nervous system because we'll die without it. But yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. It's very variable, because if you're in an office, air conditioned all day, you don't work out, you probably don't need that much, I imagine.
Right. Yeah. We work with a personal trainer who designs our custom strength and cardio plans. And I know that he's a big salt person. He'll put salt in his protein shakes. Like, he salts everything because he knows that he needs more salt for him specifically. So I absolutely know he gets more than 2 grams of salt a day for sure. So
how do you guys help your clients or customers?
We also, like the dietitians also.
Sorry, I think it froze. Go ahead.
But hydration is important, and it's something we can test on someone too. We can test your cellular hydration, your cellular inflammation with our body composition test. So we can help people realize, you know what, you might need to gain some more muscle, because muscle is made out of 70 to 75% water. So that can show here on your cellular hydration. Also, you might need to drink more water throughout the day. I feel like clients tend to drink an okay amount of water during the summer months because we're reminded that we're hot and thirsty. But during the colder months, people don't realize we still need that much water, and it gets a little bit more difficult and we have to be reminded. And there's definitely like, liquid IVs and all those little supplements that you can recommend and have people intake too. But I always like to tell people to pay attention to your urine color, actually. You don't want a dark colored urine. You want it to be fairly light, almost clear. And that's a good measurement of hydration as well. If you aren't in a place to be able to do a sweat test, the easiest way to do it, look at your pee and adjust accordingly.
I think Huberman Lab, he was saying, if you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. You should really be thirsty. And he suggested, I think it was about half your body weight in ounces, which is quite substantial. That's not easy to do. You kind of have to pee all the time if you do that. But I guess if you want to be optimal, it's just a sacrifice you make. These days, water is so popular. Don't want to get too much of the weeds about water, but do you suggest people get a certain type of filter, or maybe mineralize their water if they're filtering it? Because once you filter it, there is no mineral. So do you suggest anything like that?
We typically don't suggest filters. We're usually focused fairly much on their nutrition. We will give them that kind of generalized guideline. Half your weight in ounces is a good start, and again, meeting them where they're at. And again, their demographic plays a part in it. Can you afford filters or to go purchase water? But minimally, at least half your weight in ounces is good. Obviously, your job and your athletic performance helps with that as well.
I would say the majority of our clients are just your everyday person. They're not elite athletes who need to really, really worry about the minerals they're getting in water. I always say there's all these levers you can pull, and you want to focus on the big major levers that are going to make a big impact: diet and exercise, right? So your everyday average person comes in, they're not even eating appropriately. They're not exercising appropriately. I'm not even going to I have to triage them. I'm not going to tell them do X, Y, and Z. It's too much information all at once. I'm not going to be like, track your protein, get filtered water, watch your pH levels. Like this, it's just too much. So you have to meet the person where they're at. Now, if they've got all that under control and they want to further investigate the best type of water for them, the best mineral, the best filter, sure, let's talk about that. But the majority of our clients, they're not there. We want to at least try to get them on the right path of just health and wellness, of eating appropriately for their body, exercising. We want to pull those big levers before we worry about don't microwave plastic and all those other little things that people can concern themselves with. And I'm not saying that there's not really good information out there and that there's not some great studies, and it's probably a good idea to talk about those things and learn about those things. But for our everyday client, let's talk about the bigger things first.
Yeah, it's kind of like full circle to where we started about the foundation fundamentals need to be there first. I've gone down that rabbit hole where I wasn't really on par with everything, and I'm starting to mineralize my water, and I just fell off because that's not really the most important thing right now. Maybe later down the line, once everything's locked in, you can start thinking about that stuff. I'm curious. You already mentioned some new things with the pre and post pregnancy, the hydration stuff that you're doing. Is there anything else new that you guys are fascinated with or you're exploring in your worlds?
I mean, science is always evolving, right? There's always new science and new data and stuff. So we try to stay relevant. We try to listen to current podcasts and scientific data that's been put out. Our registered dietitians have to do continuing education classes and things like that. So like Ozempic, we talked about, that's the new fad. We have to know at least a little bit of background for it so we can educate our clients the right way. And are we doctors? Are we the smartest people on earth? No, but we're here to guide and help and test along the way. So, we're always looking to improve and better ourselves. And we love people's constructive criticism, if that's what it is, or ideas on how we can improve and expand. Marly has franchise out now. So she has 4 different locations. She owns 2. We have another one in Palm Desert that she owns. We have one in Temecula Valley and Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. So we are looking to grow and expand and offer other services that come up. We're always open-minded. We're always willing to learn and educate ourselves and figure out the best possible way to serve our community.
Awesome. That's really great. If people want to find you and they want to explore these testing facilities, what you offer, where can they find you and learn more?
Wait, the site. So body metrics, not body met RX. So Instagram, website, everything's body metrics. You can find us, follow us, and see all the things that we do, and reach out to us that way. They can text, direct message, call.
We are appointment based, so people, we don't take walk-ins typically. So people do need to make an appointment and come in and see us. But we're open Monday through Saturday. We're closed on Sundays. So yeah, bodymetrics.com, at bodymetrics for Instagram, and Facebook is just bodymetrics. Try to make it easy across the board here.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. That makes it easy and simple. Just so people know, is there like a consultation process they don't have to pay for, like maybe just a little overview, or do they have to pay for that? Like, what's the first step?
Yeah, we can do phone consultations. It's pretty typical because people do have to come in fasted. So if we can have a phone consultation with them, it's easier on the clients, and that way they come in, they know what they're coming in for. But yeah, we don't charge for that at all, just to go over everything, because it does get confusing, the testing that we offer.
Okay.
And I'd like to say that we are launching a fall fat loss challenge. So it's a 6-week challenge starting in September. People have a whole entire month to come in for their initial weigh-in from September 11th to October 9th. You can come in, do your weigh-in. There's 3 different packages like to purchase to your entry into the challenge. But we are giving away $1,000. So whoever loses the most body fat percentage wins $1,000. It's something that we do a couple times a year usually. So launching our Fall into Fitness 6-week challenge for your chance to win $1,000.
Wow, you're going to get a lot of ripped people after that. That's a good size reward right there.
Money's motivating.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys for doing this. This was great. A lot of great information. I'm going to tell my wife, maybe we'll come out and do some.
Take a day of it, come on out, see us, go down to downtown Redlands. There's lots of good eateries there.
For sure.
I haven't been to Redlands since I played college football at the university there.
Oh, wow.
It's been a long time, but yeah, maybe we'll do it.
Come on a weekend.
Come on a weekend. Exactly. It's really hot where you guys are too, so it's a little crazy.
So wait till the fall and then we'll cool down.
Yeah, just give it a few months. Well, thank you guys again for taking the time to do this, and you have a great weekend.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
Bye-bye.
Bye.